And hello, this is Eamonn O'Brien, and you're so welcome to the Reluctant Speakers Club Expert Series. And today we're talking about thought leadership and what it really takes to connect or to marry all the things that you might do offline with what you're doing online. And we have an absolutely fantastic speaker today, a guest in our chair on the other side of the country in Limerick. It is David Quay. David, hello.
Hi, Eamonn. How are you?
I'm in great form. How are things in my tribe land over in Limerick?
Good. It's getting colder, but it's dry.
Good. Well, David, you're, of course, formerly the founder and director of SEO at primary position, and an expert on SEO in general, of course, and you're currently now the director of inbound marketing at Kemp Technologies. So if anybody knows about being found online, it's you.
Hopefully so.
Yes. And tell me, when it comes to, people that you perceive to be thought leaders in their space, where do you think that authority comes from?
Nowadays, it's certainly coming from how, I suppose, mid-tier leaders are sharing other people's thoughts. It can be very difficult to enter a particular group of expertise and just simply think out of the box, because a lot of people will knee-jerk against that. It depends on where you are. If there's a lot of analytical data that can shore up somebody. So that's why it's become such a big phenomenon online, where instead of having a tiny number of thought leaders, say somebody who was elected or somebody who's CEO of a very big corporation, you can now have a very small business leader who can show vast amounts of data, because everything online, for example, is trackable. And so marrying that big data with an opinion helps a lot.
Yes. Well, and I deal, of course, with a lot of professional speakers as well as people who want to be known as expert speakers in general. And one of the issues is that, when you're in front of an audience, they can see you, they can hear you, the credibility, the confidence in what you're saying is terrific. But of course, when you're dealing with online situations, you've got a major league problem, which is there is so much noise out there. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts or your ideas about what it takes, if you like, to cultivate online presence and credibility as the go-to source on something.
I think the starting point is, obviously you've got to know what you're doing. I think as well, you've got to make sure that you're not a fast follower. There are a lot of people that come in as fast followers, and they don't realize other people are talking up. So that really requires getting a sense of depth across that industry. So it might be easy to be a thought leader in Ireland, but of course outside of Ireland, a country like America and the UK, that thought leadership tends to wane. It's probably down to being very, very methodical, but also very, very repetitive in what you do. If you take, for example, Seth Godin, who talks a lot about marketing, and he's certainly a thought leader in marketing, both offline and online. He's a well-respected speaker. I think he charges in the tens of thousands of dollars per hour. He really just has one subject that he talks about, and he just has a different play on it. So he does his blog posts every week or every couple of weeks, and he's just taking the one thing he's an expert at and just looking at it from different angles and different points of view. And his case is normally quite compelling.
And tell me, is that then really all about consistency and, if you like, building kudos in a particular arena? If you're talking about America, for example, or we're talking about Britain, so Ireland would be a relatively small pond, so maybe we don't have as many people who are as visible online. But in a very crowded space like America, where you have any number of people who would claim to have a real expertise on marketing, he absolutely is fighting above, if you like, the general wage. So what is it that he's doing that is different from maybe what others are doing who don't get noticed?
Thank you for giving me the word consistency. I was grasping for it. Most thought leaders redefine things. So if I wanted to disrupt SEO, I would come in and offer an entirely new definition of the word SEO that looked at where SEO is going in 2 years and brought that definition in now. And I think that's what Seth has done so well. He's redefined everything about marketing. One of the things I've taken away most from him is that marketing really before was advertising. And now marketing has become so much more. So going viral, getting shared on social media where you don't have to pay, that's marketing. The rest was just advertising management. The second thing is he's actually been able to put it into practice. So he's been able to use his social media platform, his writing ability to write books that have become bestsellers. I think he's 8 or 9 books, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, and he started off with permission marketing, I think might have been at the outset. And you used an interesting word there. You were talking about the importance of platform, and I think that's probably the word that needs to be front and center for most people in creating online visibility. But if you had 4 or 5 or 3 or 2 tips that you would share with people or advice that you'd give on creating better and more powerful platform, what would be front and center of your thinking?
Good question. I think that a lot of people mistake channel and platform. I think they think that a platform can be a channel. If you take a social media channel or a search engine channel, they're platforms unless you've built an audience on them. So you've got a double-edged sword or a double challenge to undertake, and that is you can write good content or you can produce good content, but that's not going to draw the masses. You have to understand the mechanism of how that gets out there. Most viral content is planned well in advance with very, very huge expertise. I would be very surprised if Gangnam Style wasn't thought about 5 months before it launched. I would be very surprised if there wasn't a lot of money involved in pushing it. I suppose there's that thing, if it's going viral, it's going to go viral.
And interestingly, I have to say, until this, you said it this very second, I had completely forgotten about Gangnam Style. Thank you for that.
It's looking at the way a lot of the platforms work. Twitter is the only platform that's non-algorithmic driven. So if you post it on Twitter, it gets a fair shot with your audience. When I look at people who are doing PR or want to get communications out there, there's still an expectation that if you publish it, you've put it out there. You know, you've sent a tweet, so you've publicized it. But of course, you may only have 50 followers, and none of them may even be online or even real people. So you actually haven't done a good job, even if you had the best content in the world.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, because the major league issue there is that there's no real engagement. You can put a lot of noise out there, but if nobody's paying attention and you're not entering into conversation, chances are that not much is going to happen with that.
Definitely not. I think even though we've borrowed many terms from the print world, for example, impressions online is a fantastical unicorn number that has no meaning. I have a report that says in the last 90 days we've had 52 million impressions. While it looks good and I'm happy to email it around the company, I don't think we've had anywhere near 52 million impressions.
No, I don't know if you know this about me, but in the years gone by, I used to make a lot of commercials in America, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. I used to do a lot of advertising in newspaper, and I was always amused when I would get statistics about circulation and distribution numbers. And of course, the question was not how many people got it, but how many people read it. And there was a big difference between one and the other. It really depended on the vehicle.
Somebody was telling me the other day that if you're a car mark and you've launched a new brand and you want to get to a point where people recognize your updated Audi A6 or Skoda Octavia, It takes 150 notices of the car and the ad before somebody realizes, hey, that's the new Skoda.
Wow. Well, can I tell you something from back in the 90s, that at that time it was considered that you needed people to see a print advertisement 7 times in national press in order to get people to react to it. And that typically required 21 impressions in order for people to actually see it instead of flicking past whatever you were doing. So if when you multiply that out, of course it's not surprising that that online stat mightn't be as far from the truth as you imagine when you think there's now over 1 billion websites. Now of course a lot of these aren't active, but you know, blog posts alone, 2.5 million extra blog posts a day vying for views.
So there's well over 1 trillion websites.
1 trillion. Oh, okay.
The number is it's statistically crazy. I think the last I read was 24 trillion, which has to be refreshed by Google every 24 hours. Google became the largest search engine in 2000 when it was maybe it's 2001. It was the first search engine to index 1 billion websites.
Yeah. So, and doesn't that create a problem then, David? Because, you know, regardless of whether it's 1 trillion or it's 1 billion, it's an awfully big number. And the problem for anybody trying to create visibility is you can do, and maybe you'd comment on this, you can do a lot of things that can actually undermine your ability to get noticed and to start conversations. And if you were thinking about the things that you shouldn't do, what would be top of your nasty list?
Coming back to impressions and being top of my nasty list is, I suppose, if you know that number that you need 21 impressions to get that many people to read your ad, well, you can't really tweet the same tweet 21 times over in the hope that you'll get more people, because you'll do the opposite, right? You'll be counterproductive. And I think that's my #1 pet peeve, is people doing too much of the same thing and expecting a better result. And it applies to search as much as it does to social media. If you're not getting the engagement, change the story. Do something different.
So it's a question of having a lot of variety?
In search, definitely not. You should be consistent. Google is looking for thought leadership. It's looking for, if I was an off-license, if I was a quality wine producer, I would want to talk about wines by the region, by the grape, very specifically. I almost wouldn't want to mention spirits. If I was an off-license, I would want to mention variety. That's what I'm going to play to, a wider, broader audience, a couple of niche products, but I'm not really going to be known as a niche wine producer. And if I want to be, I'll have to be there. I think far too many people try to get more traffic to a website by going off topic or too broad. And Google's smart enough to catch up with that. The same with Twitter. If you want to be known as a thought leader, as an accountant or a consultant, if you go off topic too far, people aren't going to know what you do. And then there has to be a balance. You can't just talk about yourself all the time. There has to be some entertainment. But I think the repetitive stuff, you know, why buy from me? 10 things you should know when hiring an expert like me. These kind of narcissistic posts.
So few and well beats many and shallow is what you're saying.
Definitely. If you're blogging 5 times a week and your traffic is stable, bring it back to 1 and put all of that effort into rewriting 100 times and come up with something really good. Probably the best way to do it is not try and fix the world from your point of view, which many of us do. It's a natural instinct. But look at your Twitter stream. What are people asking all the time? What's the problem that people raise? And say, you know, design it from it. You asked, I'm answering.
Yeah, very good. So ask people the questions.
Yeah, definitely. Get them to write your blog post in terms of what they want to read about.
And they will. I mean, I will tell you, for example, before I launch my book, that one of the things I did, in fact you were one of the people who commented on it, was to put out examples of here are the kinds of covers that I could use and tell me what you think of this, and it started a good conversation, hugely informative, and people love to be involved.
I remember that, and of course it creates an association with it. So if I pick the winning cover, it's almost a part of me that I want your book to do well.
That's it, and in fact it's part and parcel of how more and more things are happening in commerce today, which is your audience is more involved in the process. And that's especially true in terms of what you're doing online, I guess. And I suppose if we were to round out our conversation and boil things down just in terms of one or two ideas, that if somebody is looking to be known as an expert in a particular area or as a thought leader, if they did nothing else, what would be the one, two, here's what you really ought to consider that you might share with people?
Okay, and I'm gonna borrow one from Google, and that's go out and talk. Stand up in front of people and talk. So if it's your local chamber of commerce and they're having a networking event and you can find a way to get up and talk to people, pay it forward. So don't go up there to show people you're an expert, that's why they should engage with you, but go there and give people something for free. Tell them, look, if you do this, you can fix that problem. And then you will inevitably find a small percentage of that group, might be 2%, it might be 5%. They don't have the time or money to waste. They're just going to want to hire you to do it. And that's the best advice I can give.
Yes.
But absolutely go out and meet and talk and present, even if you start with the local, Boy Scouts club and move up from there. Work your way up, and that's the number one thing I think people could do.
Well, there's no doubt about it, David. The truth is that if you are out speaking with people, that you are getting undivided attention, and if you're sharing something that is valuable as opposed to you're engaging in self-promotion, you will find people who will beat a path to your door. And incidentally, event organizers love people that share something valuable because they're in short supply.
That's true, and people will tweet about you, and they will quote you on Twitter, and they will read your blog, and it's a real connection. They can look at you, they can get a sense of who you are, and I think it's the best way to go out and do the best job online.
Good. Well, listen, David, thank you indeed for joining me this evening. I appreciate that. I know it's getting late here, so we're going to leg it very shortly, but thank you for listening today, and you have been listening to Eamonn O'Brien, and this is the Reluctant Speakers Club Expert Series, and until the next time, happy speaking.